The Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War was a pivotal conflict in the history of North America, lasting from 1846 to 1848. It fundamentally reshaped the territorial boundaries of the United States and Mexico, leading to significant geopolitical, economic, and cultural consequences. The war stemmed from territorial disputes, ideological conflicts, and power imbalances between the two nations. This in-depth analysis will examine the causes of the war, major events and battles, its conclusion, and its lasting legacy. The Mexican-American War's roots lie in the complex political and territorial dynamics of the early 19th century. At the heart of the conflict were issues related to westward expansion, nationalism, and the concept of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. This ideological belief held that the United States was destined to expand across the North American continent, spreading democracy and capitalism. Advocates of manifest destiny viewed territorial expansion as a divine right and a fulfillment of the nation's providential mission. As a result, the annexation of vast territories like Texas and California became a central goal for many Americans. Texas independence and annexation. The immediate precursor to the war was the Status of Texas. After gaining independence from Spain in 1821, Mexico inherited the territories previously controlled by Spain, including Texas. Mexico encouraged American settlers to move into Texas, hoping they would provide a buffer against Native American raids. However, tensions arose as the American settlers, many of whom were slaveholders, clashed with Mexican laws, particularly the 1829 abolition of slavery. By 1836, Texas declared independence from Mexico, and after a brief war, it established itself as the Republic of Texas. The U.S. hesitated to annex Texas immediately due to fears of provoking Mexico and stirring up sectional tensions over slavery. However, in 1845, under President James K. Polk, Texas was annexed, intensifying the conflict. Boundary dispute. The annexation of Texas led to a border dispute between the United States and Mexico. The U.S. claimed that Texas's southern boundary extended to the Rio Grande, while Mexico asserted that it was the Nueces River, roughly 150 miles to the north. This dispute set the stage for hostilities, as both sides stationed troops in the contested region. The war officially began in 1846, but tensions had been escalating for years. Several key factors contributed to the outbreak of hostilities. Diplomatic failure. Before resorting to military action, the U.S. sought to negotiate a settlement. In late 1845, President Polk sent John Slidell to Mexico with an offer to buy California and New Mexico for $25 million and resolve the Texas boundary dispute. Mexico, deeply insulted by the annexation of Texas and unwilling to cede more land, refused to meet with Slidell, thus ending the possibility of a peaceful resolution. Skirmish at the Rio Grande. In early 1846, Polk ordered General Zachary Taylor to move U.S. forces into the disputed territory between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande. On April 25, 1846, Mexican troops ambushed a U.S. patrol, killing or wounding 16 soldiers. Polk seized on this incident as a justification for war, declaring that American blood had been shed on American soil, and the U.S. Congress declared war on May 13, 1846. The Mexican-American War featured several significant military campaigns and battles. The U.S. military benefited from better organization, superior artillery, and experienced officers, many of whom would later become key figures in the American Civil War. The Northern Campaign. The war's early phase centered on the disputed Texas territory. General Zachary Taylor, who would become a national hero, led the American forces in several key engagements. Taylor's victory at the Battle of Palo Alto on May 8, 1846, marked the first major clash of the war, and the subsequent Battle of Resaca de la Palma solidified American control of the Rio Grande. The invasion of northern Mexico. After securing Texas, Taylor launched an invasion of northern Mexico, where he won a decisive victory at the Battle of Monterrey in September 1846. The Mexican forces, commanded by General Pedro de Ampudia, were forced to retreat, but Taylor granted them favorable terms of surrender, a decision that was controversial in the U.S. The Southern and Western campaigns. Simultaneously, the U.S. launched campaigns in California and New Mexico. In the summer of 1846, Colonel Stephen W. Kearny led the Army of the West to capture Santa Fe without resistance. Meanwhile, U.S. naval forces and settlers, led by John C. Fremont, took control of California during the Bear Flag Revolt. By early 1847, California and New Mexico were securely in American hands. The Mexico City Campaign. The war's climax came in central Mexico. In 1847, President Polk appointed General Winfield Scott to lead an amphibious invasion of Veracruz, Mexico's principal seaport. After a successful landing, Scott embarked on a march to Mexico City. Along the way, he encountered fierce resistance, but the American army triumphed in several key battles, including the Battle of Cerro Gordo and the Siege of Mexico City. By September 1847, American forces had captured the Mexican capital. The capture of Mexico City marked the end of major hostilities, and both sides began negotiating a peace settlement. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1948, officially ended the war. The terms were highly favorable to the United States. Territorial gains. The treaty ceded a vast expanse of Mexican territory to the U.S., including present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and portions of Colorado and Wyoming. This territory, known as the Mexican Cession, amounted to approximately 500,000 square miles, increasing the size of the U.S. by about one-third. The Rio Grande border. Mexico also recognized the Rio Grande as the southern boundary of Texas, resolving the dispute that had sparked the war. Compensation. In return for the ceded territory, the U.S. agreed to pay Mexico $15 million and assume responsibility for up to $325 million in American citizens' claims against the Mexican government. The Mexican-American War had profound and lasting effects on both nations. Expansion of U.S. territory. The most immediate consequence was the dramatic expansion of U.S. territory. The acquisition of California and the Southwest paved the way for America's emergence as a continental power. These lands also became critical for future economic development, particularly with the discovery of gold in California in 1848, sparking the gold rush. Slavery and sectional tensions. The acquisition of new territories reignited debates over the expansion of slavery, deepening the sectional divide between North and South. The question of whether the new territories would permit slavery led to the passage of the Compromise of 1850 and set the stage for the Civil War. Mexican nationalism and political instability. For Mexico, the war was a national humiliation. It not only lost nearly half its territory, but also plunged into political instability. The loss of resources and prestige exacerbated internal divisions, weakening the government and making Mexico vulnerable to foreign intervention, as seen during the French invasion in the 1860s. The U.S. military and leadership. The war was a proving ground for many future leaders of the American Civil War, including Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson. Their experiences in Mexico shaped their military strategies and leadership styles. Relations between the U.S. and Latin America. The war also set a precedent for U.S. intervention in Latin American affairs, fostering resentment among Mexico and other Latin American nations. It contributed to a broader perception of the U.S. as an imperialist power in the Western Hemisphere, influencing future relations in the region. The Mexican-American War was a defining moment in the 19th century history of North America. It was driven by the forces of expansionism, economic ambition, and national pride. While it fulfilled the U.S. vision of manifest destiny, it also exposed the deep fractures in American society, particularly over the issue of slavery. For Mexico, the war was a tragedy that reshaped its national identity and borders. Both nations emerged from the conflict changed, and its legacy continues to shape their histories to this day.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Delving into the Deep for regular updates.